Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Movie Nights movie review. I am Dalton Burdett with the amazing Nick Iricchio. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm feeling prehistoric, buddy.
Of course, amazing. Thank you. Thank you, as always, for your wonderful puns. Today, we are talking about Jurassic World Rebirth. This film is directed by Gareth Edwards and is written by David Koepp, based off the Jurassic Park franchise. The last one came out in 2022, I believe, Jurassic World Dominion. And obviously, we'd reported on this on our roundtable that, whenever new casting and things would come out like that, and we were very much kind of looking forward to the movie. And now we're going to dive into the review of it. I'm going to throw it over to you first, Nick. Let us
Ooh.
know what you thought of Jurassic World Rebirth.
Overall, I'll just go right off the top. I'll say I thought it was fine, borderline on meh.
Yeah.
I found myself a little underwhelmed with the whole thing. I'll start off with some pros of the movie, right? We'll start there. I think Gareth Edwards is a terrific director when it comes to depicting the scale of objects. If you look at Rogue One, right, the AT-ATs, right, they never looked larger. The Creator was a movie that I thought was kind of but I thought the CGI work was incredible in it. I thought the scale and sheer size of everything that was going on. I think that he's great at using that sort of placing you as an audience member in the perspective of the characters that you're watching. That being said, the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park have also never felt larger. And granted, there's a lot of mutated dinosaurs and such, but to me, I thought that was kind of one of the strengths of the movies is like really kind of showing the power and the dominance and the just scariness of a lot of these dinos. So I thought that was a big plus in my book. Um, a lot of the plot of the movie, the narrative kind of propels on like needing three MacGuffins, kind of, if you will. And I thought that the set pieces revolving around those the mission the characters are on, I thought they were pretty strong. There were a lot of really cool dino scenes in the movie, and I thought that that kind of kept the excitement kind of going. But on the other side, going now kind of into the negatives because that's kind of where my positives sort of end. Um, the other side of it being everything else that wasn't a dino set piece was kind of underwhelming. I think the narrative as a whole wasn't very. I think there were concepts that were really interesting, but it felt like the two main storylines that the movie's following, these two different groups, could have been individual movies and don't work well in conjunction with one another. And I think that the characters were kind of weak, in terms of their arcs, in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling, in terms of motivation. It was really kind of like, hey, look at Scarlett Johansson, look at Jonathan Bailey, look at Mahershala Ali. We paid money and you're going to see them. But I think my biggest gripe with the movie overall, and it's kind of my same gripe that I had with like Fallen Kingdom, that I had with Dominion, is I thought that Jurassic World took the idea of what Jurassic Park was and brought it into like the modern age, right? What an amusement park looks like. Asked the question, what if the park was successful? How can that go wrong? This whole kind of narrative about corporate greed. And I felt like the movies never kind of expanded upon anything else in that. They kind of go down these weird clone storylines. And now there's some mutant dinos with this one. And it was kind of like my just left the theater asking myself, why did we have this movie? It felt like it didn't build on anything that was before it, except for like a couple of really loose ties, and just kind of left myself like, what was the purpose for this? Who had this idea? It felt very just much like, hey, we need a Jurassic World movie now. I kind of wish that maybe they moved away from the Jurassic World title and kind
Mm.
of maybe went a different direction with it, because with the title Rebirth, you're thinking renew, you're thinking, we're going to go into some sort of new era or anything like that, and it kind of just felt like more of the same. But that was a lot, so I will be quiet. What are your thoughts?
No, no, it was great. I echo a lot of your sentiments. I also feel very underwhelmed by the film. I'd say I feel mixed, leaning negative on it, but there were a lot of things to enjoy, and I'll go into some positives also. Like you mentioned, I agree with everything you said about Gareth Edwards and scale. I think that's all correct. His movies also always look fantastic, and I thought this movie looked great. I think that there are like three set pieces, even not involving the MacGuffins that you were mentioning. They take one scene directly from the Jurassic Park book and put it in and adapt it for this movie, and that scene was excellent. There's another scene in water that was really great. The actual dinosaur action was very well done. I think the big problem that I have with the movie is the characters are just very dull. They seem very one note, especially when you have such fantastic actors in the movie, like a Scarlett Johansson, like Mahershala Ali, like Jonathan Bailey. You have these A-listers, and you're like, all right, they've got A-listers for a game, let's see it. And what they're given is what is a surprisingly underwhelming script from David Koepp, who is typically a phenomenal writer, and I believe he even wrote the original Jurassic Park, if I'm not mistaken. And I felt that especially the first act of the movie, for a director with the stature of Gareth Edwards and a writer like David Koepp, everything from the blocking to the editing to the dialogue just felt clunky and odd. And that is something that you're not typically used to seeing from this team of people, even though this is their first time working together. It was just very weird to kind of process that I'm watching this Jurassic Park movie, they're building up the story that I'm supposed to be interested in, and I just wasn't. I think of the top build cast, I think Jonathan Bailey did the best of the group. I thought that he, tried to do a lot with what he could. There's one scene in particular where he gets to touch a dinosaur in the wild, and he gets overcome with emotion. And I actually really felt for the character, I understood why he was feeling that way, where he was coming from, and I'm like, okay, I can see what you're doing here. But to what you said about there being two different stories, the other story, which involves a family led by Manuel Garcia Rulfo, forgive me if I pronounced it wrong, I thought that story was really interesting. And whenever they would kind of cut to the big A-list story and then back to this story, whenever it went to this story, I was more cued into the film. And it almost, like you said, how they could be two different movies. Mm-hmm. I don't know about two completely different movies, but I think you could have focused more on the quote-unquote B story as your A story, and it would have been more compelling to what was going on. It felt more human. It felt more down to earth. The other storyline felt very corporate in a way, in that it was so on the nose, no nuance of what it was trying to do and what it was trying to say. And I think the overall message of the film that comes through to fruition at the very end is a good message. I just don't think they did the best job of spending enough time with it and telling you the message and the story that wanted to get out there in a way that made you want to come to that conclusion. It just kind of gave you the conclusion, you know what I mean?
And it's with the characters, right? So they don't when characters are making decisions, it ultimately just feels forced because they didn't really spend a lot of time developing the characters. So every decision they make, you're like, all right, I really don't know much about you, so sure.
Yeah, and it's also something too where Mahershala Ali's character has something involving his backstory that's touched upon briefly and acted very well by Mahershala Ali, and they try to do something at the end of the film to tie that arc back, but then they undo a decision that really felt like a satisfying conclusion without them undoing it. And then after they undid their decision, I'm being vague because I don't want to spoil it.
No, yeah.
It felt cheapened. It felt like, well, why were we setting up this arc if we were just going to have this happen? And there are a couple of disappointing storytelling aspects like that. And like I said, it's especially disappointing coming from the team making the movie. And again, I don't want to say that the movie is completely void of joy. I don't think it's the worst Jurassic World film that they've made. There's definitely some fun to be had here. There's some good humor. The dino action is pretty fantastic when you get it. I just think it suffers from dull characters, a lackluster story, a B story that should have been your A story, and it also has just poor pacing as well. The movie felt long, and I don't think a Jurassic World movie should feel long.
And that tinge of corporate greed that comes with a fourth Jurassic World movie.
Of course.
That also has that. No, the pacing was weird. It did feel like, I think this is just over 2 hours, and I swear I thought we were there for 3.
Yeah, I think it's 2:10 or 2:15 or something like that.
Yeah, no, there was some fat that could have been trimmed for sure.
Yeah, but guys, once you've had a chance to see Jurassic World Rebirth, what did you think about it? We'd love to see your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next review.